Welcome back, everyone. I want to get straight to the point. Right now, Oscar Piastri is struggling with the McLaren car. Lando Norris is performing significantly better and more consistent as well. And Oscar Piastri is not performing so well with the current car that McLaren is running. Now, conspiracies here, conspiracies there, but I think there's a simple explanation. There's a simple explanation. And I don't think it takes a genius to understand this simple explanation. And before we even get into it, let's just say it in the most simplest way. I believe the car was built to be the fastest car possible, and it's as simple as that. I mean, they did the same thing last year, and you know what? It went very well, particularly well for Lando Norris. And at times, Oscar could also produce great results. Now, the new car that they entered the season with, Norris was there, I mean, he was doing well in the first race in Australia. So it's not like he wasn't there at all in terms of driving the car, adapting to the car, getting great results from the car. Yeah. So where did things start to get interested? Good question. Now, there's no secret that the nature of the car can change over the course of a season. On paper, teams usually go with the option that will produce the best results for the car, meaning which direction should we go towards in terms of, making the car go faster. Earlier on in the season, you saw that the McLaren car was particularly good in high speeds corners. We saw this mostly demonstrated at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where cars like Lewis Hamilton and the Ferrari and Lewis particularly struggles in those high speed corners in these modern cars. Just these cars where the front end is where the priority is developed for, while the rear end just don't have the downforce and the stability Lewis requires. Lewis loves a car that have, a strong rear end. And I understand that because I actually like the same. And I'm not a professional driver by any means, but even in esport, whenever I'm racing, I prefer a car that has a stable rear end. So I tend to drive like the Porsche GT cars, GT2, GT3 cars, the Porsche cars, because they have a really good stable rear end. That rear end is really stable. And guys like Charles, guys like Max, they tend to love that front end, driving the car on the nose, on the front end, which is not very typical for old school drivers. Old school drivers tend to prefer their cars the way that Lewis prefers his car, with the rear end having more stability or a balance with the two. But this new generation of drivers, these guys in their 20s, they prefer a car with that front end, which is really interesting. I don't know what it is, but is it a generational thing? But regardless, that's the car McLaren had. Really good in high speeds. The way it's able to hold high speeds in those high speed corner, incredible. And some would say that it was a fairly balanced car, which saw Oscar getting great results from it and Norris also getting tremendous results from it. I would argue Norris getting poor results wasn't a case of the car. It was a case of Norris starting on pole and losing to Verstappen. We saw that last year and we see that this year also. So recently he hasn't had that issue of Verstappen always being there. Sometimes he is, sometimes Verstappen is not there. But what we have saw is that Oscar is definitely sometimes in fourth, fifth, or even lower due to poor qualifying. So has the car changed from a balanced car to a car that's more focused on front end? Why would McLaren develop their car to be more focused on front end? I said this in a previous video that McLaren spoke to, Christian Horner, got some tips. Hey, Christian, how do you make your car faster for just one particular driver? And I was just joking when I was saying this, but the more evidence come out, it really seems like McLaren developed a car, particularly the car that they have now. It's been developed to provide Norris with what he needs to get the best results out of the car. And Oscar, being a person who likes a more balanced car, doesn't have that anymore. A small change on these cars can have huge ramifications. There's no secret about that. So, what is this detail unique change that helps spark F1 resurgent? Lando Norris resurgent. So we want to get a better understanding of this, of course. The McLaren driver took a dominant victory at the Mexican GP to reclaim the lead of the championship from Oscar Piastri by a single point, which I must say, if Oscar didn't give up that place in Italy at the Monza GP, Oscar would be leading the championship by maybe 1 or 2 points. It is crazy to think that these fucking papaya rules could decide the championship. Honestly, it's ridiculous. And I don't care how much of a team player you are, in that situation, I don't know, giving up that position to your teammate, it wasn't Oscar's fault. It wasn't Norris' fault. But why should Oscar pay the price? I don't know. It's just the papaya rules. I mean, some would see them as fair, like, oh yeah, that's fair. It was the team fault. Let the team correct it. But when Norris retired, I think he got that engine malfunction or just the car malfunctioning and completely shutting down and retire. Was that at the Zandvoort GP? I can't even remember. But nevertheless, and it was that point that, Oscar came out of that race with like 32 points lead or something crazy. And we were like, holy shit, is the championship over? But we knew we still had a lot of race to go. But, just because Norris' car gave up on him, they didn't just ask Piastri, hey, Piastri, could you also retire your car so we just make it fair for the team? You see what I mean? That's a bit of an extreme example, but I make a good point. If Norris' wheels fall off, are you going to ask Piastri to retire his car? So if Norris had a turbo pit stop, you're just going to ask Piastri to give him back the place? It wasn't Piastri's fault. And you know what? As a team, you should be taking accountability inside of the team. Like, guys, we fucked up on the pit stop. We can't make this happen again and let down our driver. We want both drivers to have great pit stops. Now, that's how you deal with that. You hold the team accountable. You hold the pit stop crew accountable. But you hold the person who's in charge of the pit stop team accountable. But instead, you hold Oscar Piastri accountable and say, time for some papaya rules. What the fuck? Anyway, I'm just saying. After storming to pole in the Mexican GP, Norris revealed that he turned off the Delta display on his steering wheel earlier in the season. Driver relied on the data provided through their steering wheel display for real-time information on how their laps are developing. But in an unusual move, Norris had decided to stop using the information so he can simply focus on driving as fast as he can. That's interesting. I didn't actually know that detail, so that's interesting. And to be honest, I understand that because, playing the game, you clearly understand that sometimes you just turn off the Delta to just try and focus on just driving rather than focusing on the time, focusing on the speed here or there. Yeah, sometimes it can be distracting, while sometimes it's not distracting at all. But nevertheless, he went on to say, I've not had it since Monaco, Norris explained. I've never used the Delta since qualifying. Who knows if it would have helped or made me worse. He went on to say, I think when I don't use it, I push no matter what, no matter how the start of the lap was, no matter how the corner was. I guess it's because you have no reference, maybe of the overall time. You just always try to maximize on the corner. Otherwise, sometimes I just steer too much, and that's never the best thing. Okay, but I need him to get to the point. So Norris' upturn in form since retirement in the Dutch Zandvoort GP. So there is a less sinister explanation for what is going on, and it's linked to Norris' confidence with the McLaren MCL39. Okay, let's get to the point, article. McLaren switched off development of their 2025 car months ago, with their last upgrade coming at the Italian GP. The last big update in shape of revised floor came at the British Grand Prix in July. A new front suspension was offered to both drivers at the Canadian GP in June, but only Norris decided to take it. I heard about that one. Now, obviously, if Oscar decides not to take it, it's because Oscar knows that this is probably not gonna help my driving style. Norris decided, you know what, I want that because it's going to help my driving style. You see how this works? So when Verstappen is destroying his teammates in qualifying and in the race, understand one thing. The car is designed for Max. And Alex Albon can say whatever he wants, be like, the car is what it is. but even he admitted in that interview that, you know what, the car starts out a little bit sensitive, but Max wanted to be more sensitive, so they developed the car to be more sensitive. So in other words, they build a car for Max. They build a car for the driver they tend to have more confidence in, the driver they favor, the driver they think is faster, has a better feel for everything. So if McLaren is doing that, that explains a lot. That's all I'm saying. It's not a conspiracy. It's just what is. In 2021, arguably, if Mercedes had to choose which of their driver to develop the car mostly for, it would be Lewis over Valtteri. And you could say the same thing for 2018, 2019, or even 2017. However, when Nico was there, I have a feeling that that was a bit more tit for tat. I have a feeling that was a bit more like similar to what McLaren is doing right now, which is like, yeah, sometimes we'll listen to this driver, sometimes we'll listen to that driver. It's hard to say which one is which. Yeah. When Lewis truly cemented himself in that team, obviously it was from his initial arrival in the team. But once Nico left, from 2017 onwards, that was Lewis Hamilton team. And he loved having Valtteri as a teammate because he was comfortable, beating Valtteri. And sometimes he would accept where Valtteri was just better. Unlike a driver like Max, who his father built with him a mentality where you never accept anyone else being better on any given weekend. And that's okay, just two different mindset, two different upbringings, two different ways of going racing. Max is win everything. Lewis is like, win everything I can. But if a nice guy like Valtteri wins every once in a while, I won't feel that upset. But one thing Lewis never liked was Nico winning every once in a while. That was personal. Of course it would be, because they had such an interesting, strange relationship. But let's continue, right? So yes, McLaren switched off development of the car quite earlier on, but nevertheless, a new suspension was offered to both drivers, Canadian GP, but only Norris taking it. So over recent months, the Briton has found a sweet spot he is happier with, and his performance have improved. Okay, but this suspension was taken in the Canadian GP. So they're saying the last, upgrade was basically a revised floor in July. And that's like 4 months ago, so that's interesting. Norris revealed a key debrief with his engineer following the Singapore GP helped spark his recent resurgence. I feel better with the car today, Norris told Sky Sport F1. By nearly 30 seconds in the Mexico City, everything about how I feel with the car. Last year I felt very good with the car. I could perform better. This year I struggled to get to grips with it. It's been incredible quick, but it's clearly still difficult to drive. He always says that. He always says, oh, it's difficult to drive. And this is the same guy who was saying, Lewis only has 1 or 2 drivers to beat. He has the best car. Well, Norris, you got the best car, buddy. You only got 2 or 3 drivers to beat. Come on now. Then he goes on to admit, you know what, even if the car is the best car, it can still be difficult to drive. Well, I'm glad you took your head out of your ass. Eventually. It's just a lot of Norris quotes, to be honest. It's just a lot of Norris quotes. To be honest, this article doesn't really give me exactly what I want. But it gives us an idea that with the, perhaps with the suspension that Norris took in Canada, had to do with something with how he wants to drive. And the revised floor perhaps had to do with something with how he wanted to drive. No necessarily clear indication that they have, adjusted the development of the car for Norris' benefit, except for that suspension. It is interesting that only Norris took that suspension upgrade. Why wouldn't Piastri taken it? Because let's say they designed a suspension to benefit the car. Shouldn't both drivers have a benefit? So why would one driver say, actually, this doesn't benefit me? Is it possible that early on through the season, Norris complains of the things he doesn't like about the car, and they say we will take these things into consideration when applying upgrades and delivering upgrades. And they took those things into consideration. So when they brought certain upgrades, such as the suspension, is it possible that it was mostly to aid and improve the usability of the car for Norris? But why shouldn't that also impact the positive feelings for Piastri? In this case, it didn't. Because if it would help Piastri to go faster, of course he would take it. So why wouldn't he take it? So clearly, they have developed certain things for the car to benefit the person who complains most, Norris. So if the suspension is one of those things, who knows what else have they developed on that car, improve on that car, optimize on that car to stop Norris from complaining, to aid Norris. So I wonder if Piastri was complaining more. But that's the thing. If the car is working for you, if you find it to be balanced, what can you complain about? That it's not going fast enough? So they listen to the guy who's complaining the most, and they basically say, well, we'll take those into consideration. So the evidence is there. The evidence is there. The evidence is there. Now, regardless of all of this, should Piastri be performing this badly, especially in qualifying sometimes? I don't think so. But what if you have less confidence in the car? So it's not just about the speed that you're able to carry with the car, but the confidence also. That also takes a few tenths off you. So it's not confidence from pressure from carrying the championship per se, but it could be just confidence from not having confidence in a car. From a car that's balanced to a car that you have to drive on the nose, that's interesting. Also, if the drivers took different development parts, which car does the team focus on? Because the team only has so much resources. For a team that says we stopped developing this car months ago, okay, which car are you focusing on now? And if the cars are slightly different due to having different suspension, that's a good question. Which car are you focusing on now? Because you only have limited resources. Teams often can't afford to focus on both cars that are slightly different. That's like a job of two teams. And unfortunately, they don't have that luxury, which is why teams often developed the cars to be the same. Unless one driver says, I'll take this, and the other driver says, I'll take that. Then you have cars that are developing in two slightly directions. So who does the team decide to support the most in development? In optimizing their individual packages. If they have slightly different packages, who does the team decide, we're going to focus on this driver more? Well, here's what Red Bull does. They focus on Max. Here's what Ferrari probably does. They focus on Leclerc. Here's what Mercedes used to do when Lewis was there versus Valtteri. They'd focus on Lewis. And I'm a Lewis fan, and I can admit that of course they would prioritize Lewis in a lot of situations, especially when it comes to future development of the car. This doesn't mean on all forms. Mercedes often builds a car that is fairly well balanced. But of course, when the championship gets tight, Mercedes obviously chooses to follow Lewis. He's leading the championship. He's the best chance of winning the championship. But Lewis has a very agreeable driving style, so his demands for the car are actually very agreeable for other drivers. Other drivers tend to get along very well with Lewis' car. You saw how Russell could just jump into Lewis' car at the Qatar Grand Prix and almost won the bloody thing. Lewis has a very acceptable way of driving his car. It's a bit more simplistic compared to other drivers who have, Max wants his car to be overly sensitive, pointy at the nose in particular. Lewis just wants that rear end stability and that balanced car. You give Lewis a balanced Ferrari with the rear instability, oh my goodness. The last time we see Lewis with a car that responds very well to him was last year in Las Vegas, where he didn't qualify so well, but the race, the motherfucker was flying at the Vegas Grand Prix. I don't even think I had this channel at the time. I wish I'd made a video, and it's probably why I created this channel, because I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to make a video about just how incredible Lewis was driving. The motherfucker was flying. Even compared to Russell, the motherfucker was moving. He almost won the fucking race, despite starting God knows where, like 8th or 9th or some shit like that. It was crazy. Lewis was flying. So, that's what I got to say. Also another thing in the team is that there's no secret. There is no secret. Zach favors Norris. Nothing against Zach Brown. If it wasn't for Zach Brown, I don't think McLaren would be anywhere they are right now. I think a lot of this has to do with Zach Brown, new investor coming in from the US, new leadership coming into McLaren. He's basically the CEO of McLaren. He is the CEO of McLaren, He's done great things for McLaren, and I actually like McLaren. I cannot complain. But does he favor Norris? Yes, I think he does. I mean, the evidence is there. And for people who say, no, he doesn't, listen, we all have favorites. And if you have kids, you'll understand. Honestly, we all have favorites, fam. I don't take it personal that Zach actually favors Norris. In a lot of ideal situation, one would favor Norris because you know how long they've been building up Norris. I feel like they've been building up Norris like for the last 7, 8 years. They used to say like, "Oh, he's the next Lewis Hamilton," and I was like, "Does George Russell not exist?" I'm one of those people who was watching George Russell in GP2 or F2 at the time. I think it was GP2 at the time, and George was just his driving was just impeccable. Seriously impeccable. And I was like, and it was under Mercedes management, and every once in a while he tests the Mercedes, and I was like, this motherfucker is good. And I was like, why don't they talk about George Russell like the way they talk about Norris? Always found it a little bit strange, but I don't know. Listen, Norris family is rich, brother. Like, I think they might be richer than George family for sure. I'm just like George family got money, but I don't think his family's got money like Lando Norris family got money. I think the Norris family got some serious pocket. You know, it is so strange. The Norris family, I think, is from Bristol. I actually live in Bristol. So Lando Norris' dad, his company, I think it's Hargreaves Lansdowne or something like that. It's based in Bristol. Its headquarters in Bristol. It is so ironic because I had a teacher back in my school days, and one of my teacher, her name was Miss Norris. That is so strange. I'm only just realizing this now. Holy crap! Because I've lived a few places. I lived in London for a year or two. I've lived a few places, so I always have different teachers. But I'm only just realizing now. I had a teacher, and her name was Miss Norris. I'm like, oh my goodness, is that just a common name in Bristol, or is there some relation there? That would be wild. I mean, it wouldn't be impossible. That's very much possible, actually, that they're related. That's a tangent. That is a tangent. But yes, I had a teacher named Miss Norris, so who knows? There might be some connection there. But listen, we know Zach has a favorite, and like I said, I don't even take it personal, but what he said recently, some people can take it personal. Zach Brown is willing to lose championship rather than back Oscar Piastri or Norris. Well, you say this after you won the championship. You remember they already won the constructor championship. So what do you mean you're willing to lose championship? You're not going to lose the championship that you've already won. So what is he really trying to say? So this is a quote from Zach. We're well aware of 2007. Two drivers tied on points. One gets in front, but we've got two drivers who want to win the championship. We're playing offense. I'd rather go we did the best we could with our drivers, tied in points, and the other beats us by one than the alternative, telling one of our drivers right now, when they're 1 point apart, I know you have a dream to win the championship, but we can flip a coin and you don't get to do it this year. Forget it. Wait, so what is he trying to say? Is he trying to say, like, guys, don't even worry about winning the championship this year too much? Because if we can dominate, if we can get a good start in 2026, then we're golden for 2026, 2027, and probably even 2028. Is that what he's trying to say? Is he trying to say, like, listen, if neither of you win the championship this year, listen, as long as we get a good start with that car next year, because listen, McLaren has been on a resurgence for like 5, 6 years now. Come on now, they've been moving up the ranks ever since this guy has gotten into McLaren, has invested in McLaren. They've been moving up the ranks. I remember them winning. I think it was Daniel Ricciardo winning in Monza years ago now. But it was those moments where it was like we saw glimmers of McLaren, you know, moving up the ranks, gradually, gradually. And the Mercedes engine is really what is really, I really think they planned it very well. Their recovery back to the top. It's incredible. McLaren is champion. And I think this is the second year in a row. I think they also won it last year. So McLaren is champion. Incredible. Wait, did they win it last year? I can't even remember. Did McLaren win the championship last year as well? I think they did. But incredible. No. I might be wrong. Didn't Red Bull win the constructor last year, but McLaren was fighting with Ferrari for the constructors. So I think this is the year they won it for a while. I can't even remember, but it should be a way bigger deal that McLaren has won the championship. But right now it just feels like it's a little bit anticlimactic. It just feels a bit weird. Anyway, he went on to say, that's not how we go racing. If 2007 happened again, I'd rather have that outcome than any other involved playing favorites. We won't do it. They're saying they won't play favorites. Is it possible that McLaren is not playing favorites, but they have developed a car and it is less balanced now, but it's more attuned to Lando. And truth to be told, if Lando didn't have that DNF, Lando would be leading the championship regardless. So it's not just about the car development, it's also about Oscar. He had a great lead in the championship. Even if he's been performing, poorly, should it be this bad? Like fourth, fifth, sixth, that's bad. It should be second, third, at least. First, at best. So it's interesting. But listen, we're gonna end this video here. It's kind of hard to say, what's really going on with the McLaren team. But also, we will see how Oscar reacts for the final few races. It's not over yet. So we'll see. So thank you for watching, subscribe, and I will see you in our next video. Peace.